Welcome back, everyone. This is another episode of the Exodus Project. I'm your host, Steve Eisenhower. I'm joined with my good friend, Rabbi Stuart Federow, author of Judaism and Christianity: A Contrast, also available in Spanish.
Yay.
Please check the description for his book and others. As always, also the Hebrew Jumpstart video, Learn Hebrew in 1 hour, is also linked down there.
Yay.
Helps him out, helps me out. You're going to learn something too. All right, so Rabbi, today's video, not a very nice passage in the New Testament.
It's one of the most anti-Judaism. You have to distinguish between anti-Semitic and anti-Judaism.
Sure.
Okay, but it's clearly one of the most anti-Judaism in Matthew. They say all the time, oh, John is the most anti-Semitic. That's not how I read it. I think Matthew is far more anti-Semitic, far more hateful, far more anti-Judaism than the Gospel of John.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to some of that today.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Matthew 23 today, everybody. So let me bring it up on the screen. We can dig right into it. Let me know when you can see it.
All right. Matthew 23, then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples. Second verse, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Third, so do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do, for they preach but do not practice. Okay. A lot of things to be said just about these first three verses, okay?
Yeah.
Who are the scribes? Who are the Pharisees? Why do they sit on Moses' seat? And why is Jesus taught? Why did the author of Matthew put these words in Jesus's mouth? Since we really don't know what Jesus actually said.
Right.
Okay. You have to understand that this chapter is one of the one of the chapters most responsible for anti-Semitism through the years.
Definitely.
And Jews dying as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Scribes and who are the scribes? Well, what's a scribe? A scribe is the person who is the writer, the author.
Yeah.
So obviously. So the scribes are the ones who basically publish and republish, write out Torah scrolls and everything that people say.
Mm-hmm.
But they were also the intelligentsia.
Sure, definitely.
Of the Jewish people in Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the scholars. Yeah, for sure.
The scholars. Who are the Pharisees? The Pharisees are a grouping of the Jews of 2,000 years ago. There are the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, and the Zealots. Okay. The Pharisees, probably early. So let's say Rome took over the land in 64.
Mm-hmm.
You have antecedents leading up to what became the Pharisaic community. So the Pharisees had a kind of different take on prophecy. And they would look around and they would see no prophet for a long time, okay, since the days of what became the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say, God is still speaking to us, but God speaks to us through the texts we've already been given.
Sure.
Okay, and by interpreting those texts, we can understand better what God wants from us. Okay, the mezuzah on the doorpost. Okay, write them on the doorposts of your house. What's them? What is that referring to? What are the exact verses that you're supposed to write on the doorposts of your house?
Right.
Okay, the only way to figure that out is by interpretation. And what Judaism is the rabbinic interpretation of those kinds of verses. That's what the Pharisees did. The Pharisees, and this is incredibly important for people to understand, Christians don't get this either, by the way, is that the Pharisees became the rabbis. Pharisaic Judaism of 2,000 years ago is what developed into rabbinic Judaism.
Right.
And every form of Judaism today is a product of rabbinic Judaism.
Right.
Okay. The Pharisees were also the only ones left of all those groups from 2,000 years ago, the only group to survive Roman oppression, persecution, war, Well, to me, if God is in control, that means of all the groups that lived back then that were Jewish, the one that God wanted the most to survive is the one that survived, which is the Pharisees.
Sure.
Okay. The Sadducees were another political group. I'm sorry, another group that was far more political than the Pharisees. They're the ones who, how do I word this nicely, were under the thumb of Rome.
Yeah.
Okay. Their seat of power was the temple.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you would pay to become a high priest. The person who had the biggest, bribe to the Roman government is the one who became the high priest, even if they weren't priests, even if they
Right.
weren't Kohanim, even if they
Right.
weren't from the
Right.
tribe of Levi. Okay, because the Kohanim, the priests, are a subset of the tribe of Levi. Even if they weren't, but if they gave enough money to Rome, they became the high priest. Very corrupt. Okay. Then you had the Zealots. The Zealots were those who wanted an open warfare against Rome to throw off Roman oppression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they had assassins.
Yep. Sakari.
Okay, yeah, but what is a Sakari? Sakari
A long
is,
knife.
but a very long, thin knife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where the blade is like this thin but very long. Why? Because it fit between the ribs of a person standing there. So as you walk by, okay, you hit them with that kind of a knife.
Mm-hmm.
It would go in between their rib cage into the heart. You pull it out and keep walking. Okay. One of the things they say is Judas Iscariot was actually Judas Ish Sicariot.
And of the Sakari. Yeah.
Judas of the Sicari. Okay, and you take a look at him, and he was a zealot. Okay, and most likely he was angry at Jesus, if you believe any of the New Testament. But he was most likely angry at Jesus for not being a zealot and not being zealous enough,
Sure.
and therefore killed him.
There's another character in
If
there's another character in the disciples called Simon the Zealot.
Right. Okay, and then finally you had the Essene community. Mm-hmm. The Essene community were the lunatic fringe who took themselves away from the community out into the desert, who stayed away from everybody, who turned around looking back at the Jerusalem and the temple and talked about what a horrible, corrupt priesthood it was, because it was. Okay. And what happened? The Sadducees, who were the temple community, the temple was destroyed by Rome. They lost out. No more Sadducee. The Zealots went into open warfare against Rome in the year 66. They were squashed like bugs.
Yep.
Okay. The Essene community were the lunatic fringe, violating Jewish law. Number one, what's the first commandment? Be fruitful and multiply. But they were celibate. The only way they would increase their numbers is by
conversion. Yeah.
Conversion. And don't get many people that way, and over time you're going to go out of existence, which they did. The only one surviving all this time were the Pharisees. And if you take a look at when the Christian New Testament was written down, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years after Jesus was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as soon as you have the temple destruction in 70, Sadducees are gone, Zealots are going to be gone pretty quick, the Essenes are gone. All you're going to have left is the Pharisees at the time of Christianity.
Yep.
Which means, and people forget that the order of things in the Bible aren't necessarily reflective of the chronological order. I mean, you've got the stories of David here, okay, but where are Psalms written by David?
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in the wisdom literature. They're in the Ketuvim. Okay. Well, in the New Testament, you got the same thing. The letters of Paul predate the Gospel of Mark, which is the first gospel to be written down, not Matthew. Okay. Mark, they say, is after about 66, about when the rebellion began. Okay. They put Matthew at about 70. They put 75, let's say. They put Luke at about 80, 85, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And they put John around the year 99 to 100.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Give or take.
even you're being very conservative.
Give or take. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But the point is that by the time these gospels were written, which is where you get most of the anti-Pharisaic Judaism writings, the Pharisees were the biggest competitors to Christianity and the religion around Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So here you have a statement of Matthew, which again is going to be in the middle 80s, give or take, where it put words in the mouth of Jesus saying that the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. What does that mean? Who's Moses? The lawgiver.
Right.
So when it says scribes and Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, what Jesus here is saying is that the scribes and the Pharisees have the authority.
Yeah.
And then it says, third verse, do and observe whatever they tell you, but not what they actually do. They preach, but do not practice. You know what they say? Practice what you preach. This is where it comes from.
Sure.
Okay. So he's saying that what they teach is legit and valid, and the followers of Jesus who were Jews, he wasn't talking to the Gentiles yet. Okay. When he's talking to the Jews, he's saying, do what the Pharisees tell you to do. Do the Pharisaic Judaism.
Right.
That's amazing to be in the mouth of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. That's amazing. But here you have the introduction, the introduction, for lack of a better term, of Jew as hypocrite.
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. Jew as hypocrite. We're all the Jews are hypocrites and murderers and all that stuff. Okay. Now, next verse. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. What does that mean? Okay. That means that the Judaism they produce is hard to do, and they themselves don't do it. Jew as hypocrite, reflecting what they had in verse 3. Okay. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long. What is that all about? Okay. In other words, they're making a show of their piety. Okay. What does that mean? Phylacteries are tefillin. You look up phylactery in the dictionary and it says see tefillin. You look up tefillin and it says see phylacteries. Okay. It really did used to be that bad, but it says you will bind them on your hand and for frontlets between their eyes. It's Deuteronomy 6. Can't remember the verses, which verse it is, but it's Deuteronomy 6, right after the Hear, O Israel, the eternal is your God, the eternal is one. Okay. So it says, and they take that literally, bind them as a sign upon your hand and for frontlets between your eyes, and they make it real. So you actually bind them. Okay. And their fringes long. What does that mean? Okay. Numbers, exactly. Numbers 15, we're commanded to have fringes on the four-cornered garments that we wear, like a talit. So phylacteries broad. Look at me. Look how big mine are. I want everybody to see I'm wrapping it. Okay. And their fringes long again. Okay. They do all their deeds to be seen by others. They don't believe it. They just do it. Again, Jew as hypocrite.
Right.
Okay. Again, this becomes the model for Jews in the minds of Christians throughout the millennia. Jews are hypocrites. Jews are, stubborn, stiff-necked, whatever. All right, let's go on. Okay. And they love the place of honor at feasts and in the best seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by others. Okay. It's portraying the only competition at the time the Gospels were written as being hypocrites as being egomaniacs,
Mm-hmm.
okay, as being what's the word, show offs,
Yeah, right.
okay. Now you have an interesting statement made by Jesus in 23:8. Okay. Well, in 7, the Pharisees love being called rabbi by others. What does the word rabbi mean? It does not mean teacher. Okay. A rabbi is a look, uh if I revere you, Steve, does that make you a reverend?
No.
Because a reverend has to go explicitly to a specific kind of school, a seminary, to be ordained as a reverend. They have to be elevated to the position of reverend by their local church. However, the denomination makes a reverend, just because they are revered doesn't make them a reverend.
Mm-hmm.
A person may teach, but not all teachers are rabbis. Just because a person teaches doesn't make them a rabbi. Otherwise, every single person you've ever had in your schools, secular or religious, should be called rabbi. That's ridiculous. So
Right.
a rabbi is someone ordained by a ordaining Jewish, recognized Jewish body, okay, to adjudicate Jewish law.
Right.
It really means more of judge than it does teacher. How people got the idea that rabbi means teacher is beyond me. Okay. But look at what it says according to Matthew. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher and you are all brothers. What do Messianic leadership call themselves?
Rabbi.
Bingo.
And
Don't.
how is he to say you have one? I'm sure he's referring to himself, right?
Oh yeah,
You have one teacher, and you are all brothers.
right. But apparently he was probably talking mainly to his disciples.
Sure, but it
Okay.
says there's crowds there also.
Oh, very true.
But
So
what I was going to say, it's a Jewish tradition to call Moses Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Moses,
right,
So
right,
is he nullifying the fact that Moses is the teacher?
absolutely.
So it's very much, as you said, an attack on Judaism as a whole. And
And
you would have had other, giants at the time. You know, Hillel would have already had lived, so on and so forth. So he's basically saying like these brilliant scholars, don't revere them. You have me. That's all you need.
right. And Hillel probably died before or around the year 10.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus, if you follow what's it called, the chronology, Jesus probably never met Hillel.
Right.
All right, whatever. Verse 9, call no man your father on earth, for you have one father who is in heaven. Christians might say, well, this is hyperbole. He's exaggerating. How do you know when he's exaggerating and when he's not exaggerating?
Right.
And the idea that you're not supposed to call your father father.
And even if he is he saying that the prophet Elisha was in the wrong for calling Elijah his father?
And what about the idea of Abba?
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting that when Jesus calls God Abba, he has to translate it Abba, Father, okay, because obviously God wouldn't know what he meant by Abba. Okay. And well, Abba is like daddy. No, it's not. It's like the father.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And even if you said it's like daddy, the Aramaic would still hit the ears of the people, not as daddy, but as father.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But that really, to me, that was always the Christian response, is that he's referring to like a spiritual father, like how Elisha referred to Elijah, right? But if that's the case, then that means you're saying that the customs and the way you give respect to your spiritual father, let's just use it in that vernacular, was wrong on behalf of the people in the Tanakh.
Right.
So once again, it's another attack on Judaism.
Absolutely.
And then 10, verse 10 that's pretty heavy. You can't even call someone an instructor.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's go back.
Where to?
No, I mean back to the text.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Neither you be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ. You don't think this is really anachronistic? That at the time of Matthew, of Jesus being alive, the Messiah, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. I didn't think Jesus became the Christ, the Messiah, until he actually died for everybody's sins, according to Christian theology, but I could be wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Why do you not just say you have one instructor? Me.
Right.
Why have to be very what was the word, cryptic, maybe I guess you could say. Why have to speak in such a strange convention, you know?
Because they knew who they were writing for. All right. Yeah. The greatest among you shall be your servant. Steve, I know that there's a couple of times where it says this, but it always strikes me when I hear that exactly what somebody who felt a victim would love to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever exalts himself will be humbled. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Okay. You know, this sounds to me like various things I've read in rabbinic literature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So be that as it may. Here we have the first time where you get this refrain: woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Okay. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Okay. It becomes a repeating line, as you're going to see here. Okay. For you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. I'm not quite sure what he means by that. Okay. Like right in front of people, you prevent them from going into the kingdom of heaven. I'm not
Seems
clear.
Seems something to that effect. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go to 14. For you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter go in. To where?
Let's go to the footnote. It has a footnote there. Let's see what the footnote says, since we were a little
way
unclear on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so be right here. This bullet right here.
Some manuscripts add here, or as referred to, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense you make long prayers, therefore you will receive the greater condemnation. Okay, once again, just calling them hypocrites, you know, and greedy and selfish. Okay, again, very, very negative way to treat, to make Jews appear and their leadership appear.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this becomes the model for all of Christianity afterwards on how they're going to start looking at Jews. It only gets worse, by the way. Okay. For you neither enter yourselves nor allow these who would enter you to go in. I love this next one. No, seriously, I really do like this.
Okay.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. One more time, repeating the refrain. For you travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte convert to Judaism. And when he becomes a convert to Judaism, a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves.
Wow.
Okay. Anybody I've ever met who converts to another religion becomes very zealous for that religion.
Sorry, I was just reading what that footnote was.
Okay.
It said that hell in that verse in the Greek is Gehenna.
Yeah. Right, which is a misrepresentation of what Gehenna is all about. But be that as it may. Okay. First of all, anybody who knows anyone else who is a convert to a new religion, convert to any religion, but converted to it, will be more zealous for that religion than people who are born in that.
Sure.
People who convert to Judaism are very zealous for Judaism, more so than people who are raised in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But what I find fascinating about this, and I've gotten flack for believing this, it proves the Jews were missionaries. It shows that the Pharisees, against whom they are railing, the precursor to the rabbinic Judaism we all follow today, were missionaries for Judaism. I'm not going to pass, the city of Houston is not going to pass a law which says no one is allowed to play Monopoly on Interstate 45 unless people are playing Monopoly on Interstate 45. You don't pass a law. You don't pass a law
Right.
unless people are doing it.
Right.
Okay. The Council of Nicaea, and I can't remember if it's the first one in 325, give or take, or if it's the second Council of Nicaea in 4 something. I can't remember which one. Passed laws that gave the death penalty to any Jew caught missionizing and the person he was trying to convert. Another indication that, yeah, actually, Jews used to be missionaries. But this text tells the zealousness with which people who converted to Judaism treated their Judaism.
Sure.
Okay, I love that paragraph for that reason. Okay, woe to you blind guides who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing, but if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath. Making the connection between Jews and money.
Yep.
This is an ongoing, long-term anti-Semitic trope that Jews are money hungry. And you know, when I was growing up in Springfield, Missouri, standing in line, okay, at lunchtime to get something to drink, and I'd feel something hit my back, and I'd look around and people were throwing pennies at me to see if I would scramble after the money.
Wow.
Okay.
Nice Christian kids, huh?
Oh, yeah, very much so. All right. If you go pick up the penny, look, Jew and money, scrambling after money. If you kick it away or ignore it, oh, well, Jews are rich. He doesn't even need a penny.
Yeah, so it's lose-lose.
Lose-lose. Okay. And by the way, here we're going to get a series of if anybody swears by this, but if anybody swears by that. What does it mean to swear by something? Okay. It basically means something bad happened to what I swear by if it turns out that I'm lying. If I swear by the temple, may the temple be destroyed if what I'm saying is not true. If I swear by the gold of the temple, may the gold of the temple be, turned to nothingness if I'm lying. If I swear by my children's lives, God forbid a million times, it means may my children die because I lied.
Yeah.
It's a way of expressing the sincerity with which a person is making an oath.
Exactly. So what he's going to say, or what he's really saying here is the Pharisees, they don't care about the temple, they care about the riches in the temple.
Right. And this is a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
You blind fools, for which is greater the gold of the temple that has made the gold sacred. Next one. And you say, if anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift that is on the altar, he is bound by his oath. Again, okay, you blind men, for which is greater the gift of the altar that makes the gift sacred. Again, it's hypocrisy. You don't even recognize what really is sacred.
Yep.
And you don't care enough about what is sacred to swear your oath by it, or to say that somebody who swears by it is bound by the oath, which, by the way, also ties into the idea that all Jews are liars.
Sure.
Okay. So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. Whoever swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits upon it. Okay, so that's the end of that series of if you not recognizing worth and okay. Next one, again, the refrain. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. So go back down a little bit. Okay.
Up, you mean?
Yeah. Make the text. There we go. Okay. So mint, dill, cumin, probably not that expensive an offering.
Right.
Okay. And have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. So the weightier matters of the law being justice, mercy, and faithfulness is irrelevant. And the important thing is the mint, the dill, and the cumin. And again, that's sort of Jews chasing after money.
Sure. That
Okay.
actually would align better with the that footnote we looked at where it said some manuscripts say that they were guilty of neglecting the widow. Right. So that would
because
actually
they're heartless, because the Pharisees, which is all Jews, we're going to get to this a little bit more in a few minutes, okay, are hypocrites and liars and no morals and no ethics.
right.
Okay. Okay. You blind guides straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. All right. By the way, nobody I know of swallows a camel, but they can choke on a gnat.
Sure.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. What does this mean? Outside the cup and the plate is appearance.
Right.
Inside the plate and the cup, greed and self-indulgence, you're the cup, you're the plate. So they're saying that the scribes and Pharisees make themselves look pious, okay, but they're actually immoral. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate, that the outside may also be clean. Verse 27. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. By the way, what is it that Paul, in his anger, screams at I forgot who it is. You whitewashed wall.
Okay. Is that to Peter? He says that to Peter when Peter will sit with Gentiles?
No. I think he says that to the wait a minute. Give me a second, I'll find out. It's not coming up on I might maybe white.
Acts 23:3.
Okay.
Let me look it up here. Then Paul said to him, God will strike you, you whitewashed wall, for you sit to judge me according to the law, and do you command me to be struck contrary to the law?
Right. Which is
says he was talking to someone called Ananias.
Right. Who was a priest, I believe. I'll have to look. I can't remember. I think it was the high priest. So you are like a whitewashed tomb, which outwardly appears beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. So again, he's claiming that the scribes and Pharisees make themselves look religious, make themselves look pious, but inside they're immoral and unethical.
Yep.
28. So you also outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. That's what we just said. Okay. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Steve, what prophets? Okay. How many prophets and who were they that supposedly the Jewish people had murdered?
Right.
And remember something, and we're going to see this real, laid out in the next, before we're done with this 23rd chapter. Okay. It's all the Jews. It's not just the scribes and Pharisees. When according to the book of Matthew, Jesus in the 23rd chapter is talking about, the murders and all this stuff. He's talking about all Jews. We'll see this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all murderers. We're all liars, which picks up in John 8 as the devil was a murderer and liar, and you're the murderer and liars too, because you're the children of the devil.
Right.
Which is why they think Jews have horns, because the devil has horns. The children of the devil should have horns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Yeah. So verse 30. What prophets? how many times in the Hebrew scriptures does it say that prophets were killed, were murdered? There was a bad king, okay, who didn't like what the real prophets were saying. He wanted to use the prophets that were paid to be prophesying. You know, you pay me to be a prophet. I'm not going to prophesy against you if you're the one paying me.
Yeah, right.
So but that's only the one king. That's not every Jew on planet Earth. Why should we be responsible for what one king did a long time ago?
Sure.
Okay, verse 31. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. What prophets? Where? Tell me who it is.
Sure. Well, he's gonna give some names, and I have some notes at the bottom to show he didn't even know what he was talking about. So
let's go to the notes now.
Well, I want to after we mention the names that he says explicitly.
Okay, we'll get okay. All right. Oh yeah. When he mentions them wrong. Okay. Fill up then the measure of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers. How are you to escape being sentenced to hell? What have you ever in all of the Christian New Testament? Okay, in all of the Christian New Testament, speaking of the Gospels, because that's where the life and whatever of Jesus is portrayed. Jesus very easily grants forgiveness to people who sin against anybody and everybody else.
Right.
Where did Jesus ever freely, generously give forgiveness to anybody who transgressed against him personally? Show me where.
In fact, when someone slapped him across the face, he just said, why'd you hit me?
He rebukes him. He doesn't turn the other cheek. What a hypocrite. He rebukes him for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, he's sentencing them to hell. Okay. Verse 34. Therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town. The Jews will crucify?
I actually, one of my main theories about Matthew 23 is it had to be a later invention, interpolation, because
all of Matthew is later.
Exactly. But I'm just saying this chapter for sure. There's no way Jesus said that. There's no way Jesus said that. There's no way he told a group of Jews that you're going to crucify people. Jews didn't crucify people. And you know he's talking about himself, right?
Absolutely. And if Jesus knew anything about Jewish history, if Jesus knew anything about Jewish law,
and this is long before the Passion. So not long before in the book, but it's before the Passion, clearly.
Right.
And when Jesus is teaching his disciples that he's going to be crucified and beaten and killed, they said, "Be it far from you, Lord."
Yeah, what are you talking about?
So if he was already teaching it to crowds, which they were at, why would they be so taken aback when he says it has to happen to me?
And if they knew what a Messiah was supposed to do and be, why didn't they say, "Oh, thank you, Jesus, for being crucified for us and dying for our sin"?
Sure. And if they truly believed he was a Messiah and this was about to be the Messianic kingdom was about to be ushered in, why would there still be prophets being killed and crucified? If Jesus is here to bring an end to all that,
right?
Why are there going to be prophets being killed anyway?
And
right?
to take it even further back, just to add to the list, okay, if people really thought that this Jesus was going to be the Messiah, I don't know, like Herod, why would he seek him out to destroy him?
Yeah, right.
All right.
And let's think about 34 there a little bit. Some of them you will flog in your synagogues. Well, what's really like the only time in the Tanakh we see prophets being flogged? It's the false prophet chapter in what's that, Zechariah 13?
Right.
Right, when the false prophet, they say, "What are the wounds on your back?" And he says, I received these in the house of my friends," for being a false prophet.
Exactly.
That's why you get flogged.
There are other reasons for which you get flogs, but would that be done in the synagogue?
Sure, but if you're in the context of prophets, that's really like the only explicit place to a prophet being flogged would be if you're a false prophet.
Right.
Right.
But it wouldn't take place in a synagogue.
Right.
The whole thing is messed up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 35. So that on you may come all the righteous. This sentence, this verse, more than any other verse, is so hateful and divisive and anti-Semitic and leads to the persecution of the Jews
Mm-hmm.
that it's just so that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Now I'll go to the notes.
No. Yeah, go to the notes. All right, let's see what you have. Okay.
Okay, start there.
In the 8th month of the 2nd year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah the son of Barachiah, the son of Iddo the prophet, saying.
So that's introducing the prophet Zechariah, right?
Okay, right.
That's the son of Berechiah, who
Yeah,
he just said is the one that was killed.
right.
But 2 Chronicles 24:20 says something completely different.
And the Spirit of God came upon Zechariah the son of Jehoiada, the priest, who stood above the people and said to them, thus says God, why do you transgress the commandments of the Lord so that you cannot prosper? Because you have forsaken the Lord, and he has also forsaken you. And they conspired against him and stoned him with stones at the commandment of the king in the court of the house of the Lord. Thus Joash the king did not remember the kindness which Jehoiada his father had shown him, but slew his son, Barachiah the son of Jehoiada. And when he died, he said, may the Lord see and avenge. So who was killed in the court of the house of God? Not Barachiah the son of,
Or not Zechariah.
I'm sorry, not Zechariah the son of Jehoiada, but Zechariah.
No, it was that one. Not
No, but the New Testament text doesn't say that.
The New Testament text says Zechariah son of Barachiah. Yeah,
right.
That's not who it was.
No, that's the point.
Right. It was Zechariah son of
so
Jehoiada. Yeah.
Either Jesus doesn't get doesn't know his history, okay, or whoever wrote this and put the words in Jesus's mouth doesn't know the history.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Okay. And that also would indicate to me, at least, how could the book of Matthew be inspired from the Holy Spirit?
Sure. If Jesus himself didn't even know it.
Right.
And if you're going to be standing in front of a crowd of Pharisees, basically cussing them out, and you can't even get your biblical facts straight, which is their wheelhouse, they know this book better than you. Mm-hmm. Like, you think they're going to take a single thing you say seriously?
Have you seen some of the contortions they go through to try to validate that Berechia was actually Jehoiada?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's all right, but go back up.
Here's something funny. Read this subscript right here.
Some manuscripts omit the son of Barachiah. Of course they leave it out.
Yeah, you don't change. You know there's an issue. You don't change something if you know there's nothing wrong with it, right?
Yep. All right, go back up to the verse because there's something else we need to discuss.
Okay.
Can you go up a little bit further?
Sure. That one?
Yes, because it's part of 35, and it's important to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come, and it goes on from there. Keep it up, Steve.
Keep it up. Okay.
Keep it up. Okay. Did God send prophets and wise men only to the Pharisees?
No.
Did God send the prophets and wise men and scribes, only to the Jews living in the time of Jesus?
No.
That's why when people try to rationalize this, verse 35, and say, oh, this is only about the Pharisees and scribes, it's a lie. It's not true. It's preceded by, I send you, the prophets and wise men, and then verse 35, so that on you may come, and goes on from there. Now,
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Another way to show that either Jesus or the author of Matthew didn't know his biblical history. Do the Jews come from the line of Cain? Or do they
Well,
come from Seth?
believe Seth, but I'll have
Seth.
to.
Right. It's
Right.
Seth. 100%. It's
Okay.
Seth. Cain killed Abel,
Right.
which means the Jews are not descendants of the one who killed Abel. So why would Abel's death even be on them? This was
Steve.
thousands of years before the nation of Israel even existed, right?
Steve. Deuteronomy 24:16. No man shall be put to death for the sins of his son. No son will be put to death for the sins of his father. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin.
Sure.
In Judaism, in the Bible, God tells us one person does not inherit the guilt from sins committed by somebody else.
Right. But to me, that's just
so even if it was
blatant, very blatant red flag that the author of Matthew, if Jesus said this, that means Jesus is just an imbecile, right?
He's a hater.
But it also goes to show that the author of the gospel, or if Jesus, if he said this, doesn't even realize that the people he's condemning they don't even come from that line. Like Cain killing Abel has nothing to do with them. So why even include that? That's either you just throwing a tantrum or you really just don't know what you're talking about.
And even if this was Seth who killed Abel, which it was not,
right?
We do not inherit the guilt for a sin committed by an ancestor.
Exactly.
That's antithetical to repeatedly. It says this in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing about this paragraph that you got to understand. Okay, let me 23:36. So it's Matthew 23 36. I want to get the pronunciation correct. Okay. Now what? Okay. Okay. I don't personally know Koine Greek. Okay. I think the word is pronounced Genea. Could be Genea, but I think it's Genea. Okay. It doesn't mean generation. It means people. Okay. It means, why is this not working? Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. Well, this is not giving me much. All right.
Here, I have it open.
What do you have open?
Matthew 23:36, interlinear with the Koine Greek up.
Okay.
Word for generation is, yes, just as you said, Genean. Genean.
Okay. All right. But let me.
And I went to the concordance to see exactly what the word means.
Yep.
Race, family, generation.
Race, family, people. Okay. So let's look at this verse 36 again. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this
family, people. Yeah.
People. That means all Jews. Christians will mistranslate this to say generation to get away from this idea that all Jews should be persecuted because of what happened.
Right. So maybe it's even something more diabolical. Maybe he's saying that
I think it is.
Maybe the Jews come from Cain is what he's implying, which would not be very nice. Right?
Yep. Wait a minute. Let me. Okay. Wait a minute. Genea, commonly translated generation, refers to, quote, the whole multitude of men living at the same time, and is used especially of the Jewish race living at one in the same period. The implication of translated Genea incorrectly, in conformity with some Christian commentators, has contributed to Christian anti-Jewish feelings throughout the centuries. Okay, truly I say to you, all these things shall come upon this generation. limits the condemnation to the entire Jewish people of Jesus's day. Matthew's Jesus announces his Jewish contemporaries as a wicked and adulterous generation and as a faithless and perverse generation. That's Matthew 16:4 and Matthew 17:17. By substituting people or race for generation, these phrases became a condemnation of the Jewish people of all generations.
Right.
The book I'm looking at is called Missionary Christianity.
There you
go. Okay. Yeah. Missionary Christianity, and it's by Gerald Siegel.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, it's at Jesus's trial in the exact same gospel, the Gospel of Matthew, that the Jews apparently cry out, "His blood is upon us and our children."
And do you know? Forget Jews. Do you know any parent who would say, "I'm committing this sin, and I want my kids to get the punishment for my sin"? Is that a thing that any parent would say? Much less a Jewish parent. Much less a Jewish parent who was raised on, no man shall be put to death for the sins of his child, no child will be put to death for the sins of his parent. Every person shall be put to death for his own sin.
Yeah, it's all polemical. It's all just to paint the Jewish people as sickos. Is what it is.
And it worked.
Yeah, it did work.
And it worked
very well. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So last 3 verses.
No, but this is very important to understand. It's a lament. It's a lament over Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the capital of only the Pharisees in the days of Jesus.
Right.
Jerusalem is the capital city of the Jewish people since the time of David. Once again, by this lament over Jerusalem, okay, it's talking about all Jews. And it's not just all Jews then, as he wrote, okay, it's all Jews of all generations get the blame.
Right.
Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. Where's that at? How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing? Stubborn, okay, stiff-necked, won't recognize the truth of Jesus. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Eternal." Okay? Baruch haba b'shem Hashem. Okay? So, what is this saying? Until all you Jews convert to Christianity and become believers in me as your Savior, Messiah, and Son of God, Jesus isn't coming back. So all Jews get condemned. All Jews now, because we operate under Pharisaic Judaism, which became Rabbinic Judaism, are condemned. Okay? But until all Jews are missionized and become Christians, Jesus isn't going to come back. So guess what? I guess it's my fault that Jesus hasn't come back.
Sure. And what's also funny is he said that he would be coming back very soon. In that same generation, they wouldn't taste death. So he assumed that this little tantrum would work, but it didn't.
Well, he also assumed, okay, that, well, if you believe he even said those words, but that's another issue. Okay. And real quick, because I think I forgot to say it, going back to this idea that Jesus never was that generous and forgiving to people who hurt him personally. In the parable of the king who goes away to get crowned and then comes back to reign. Okay. Well, how does it end? With Jesus himself saying, "Let those who will not have me reign over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me.
Give me a sword and kill them in front of me."
Right. So, you know, this whole scenario sets up the persecution of the Jews from that point on.
Sure.
Including today, because Christianity, okay, in this day was already competing with Judaism. By the time the Gospels were written, in my opinion, the split had already taken place between Jews and Christians.
Sure.
Why? Because Christianity came up with this idea of a dying, saving man God. Right. And even if you say the man God part didn't come for later, just the idea of a dying, saving person is like Dionysus, okay? It's like Perseus, all these people whose mother was human, whose father was God, and whose death brings about salvation somehow.
Right.
Okay, it is Matthew is the worst, I think, far more so than John, in terms of creating and advocating the hatred of Jews,
Right.
especially the hatred of Judaism. But that leads to the hatred of Jews, and we just saw a lot of it.
Definitely, without a doubt, for sure.
Yep.
Knocked it out of the park, buddy.
Well, only with your help, Steve.
I really enjoy this format of show with you, where we just take a chapter of the New Testament and break it down. I think it's very good, and it's good for the audience because you're seeing us go through the chapter.
Right.
You know, we're not spinning things; we're just showing it the way it is.
Yep.
And and it's very enlightening,
Well,
especially when it's some different perspective. Like when you're part of the culture that's been on the receiving end of what that chapter has caused for the last 2,000 years.
Yep.
So,
and it's not just the chapter; it's the whole Matthew and John, and Jews are hypocrites and liars and murderers, and they're money hungry, and it all goes back to the source in the New Testament.
Sure.
Very sad.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Sad history.
But everybody, if you like the way we're doing this type of show, where we're breaking down chapters like we did with Hebrews 8 and now Matthew 23, drop a chapter if you think it's something that would be good to break down. If maybe some wouldn't be that beneficial, but of course there's always those big chapters like Galatians 1, 2, and 3, and all those, all these different very problematic areas. We're happy to do it. We're happy to answer your questions. So send in some questions, drop a comment, share these videos.
Yep.
And one final time, Rabbi Stuart Federow, author of Judaism and Christianity: A Contrast, English and Spanish. Like I said in the description, there they both are.
Yep. Ta-da.
Ta-da.
There we go. It was reflecting. All right.
So, all right, my friend, any final thoughts, final comments, final gripes?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, always. We had a break. We had quite a break. I was on a 9-day Caribbean cruise, soaking up some sun with no cell phone. So
lucky man.
Yeah, it was a good time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good to get that mental.
You work hard and you deserve it, Steve.
Thanks. I was actually ready to get back to work, though. I was kind of like itching to get back to real life for a little bit.
Hey, Steve, I retire. Okay, I am ready to retire. Yeah. All right.
But all right, everybody. Until next time, this was the Exodus Project. I'm your host, Steve Eisenhower, Rabbi Stuart Federow. We'll see you next time, everyone.